I will give an overview what we are gonna talk about. On the first part, I would like to cover your story, Cara, your journey as a listening teacher, and also I would like to touch on the topic how to learn English with movies and series. And then in the second part, I want it to be like a movie club, and we will talk about Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. And I saw that you gave a lot of interviews, and it's really cool that you give away all your knowledge about learning with movies and series. And I thought I wanted to be a little bit different, and that's why I think it would be really great to do something together, very practical, like discussing the movie together.
Agreed.
And also, just so you know, listeners, I have set up a list on Spotify in which I have put like 25 interviews with you, Cara.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible.
Oh, are there that
it's
many?
Like,
okay, you have a better list than me, I think.
There is more than 20 hours of content which you share your insights about learning with movies and TV series. But there are also a few other topics, like how you can pass a British citizenship test. That was also really great with Luke Thompson.
Yeah.
And you even talked about the climate crisis.
Yeah.
So was it difficult for you to give all of these interviews? Did you get more experienced over the years?
I guess so. I mean, I think when you give an interview about a topic you know well, it's not so hard because you kind of know. Well, sometimes people give me the questions in advance, but I kind of know what I'm going to talk about because, it's the thing that I do every day. So that definitely makes it easier. But I hope they've gotten better over time, because if you found like over 20, then we must be going back in time a few years. So it would be interesting to hear kind of earlier ones. And also my point of view has evolved and what I'm doing has evolved. So I'm sure that's changed over time. But no, I enjoy giving interviews. It's not like, it's much easier in a way than content from scratch where you have to really think about what you're doing. Just speaking about it is somehow a bit easier, I think, personally.
And I didn't give you any questions beforehand, so it puts more pressure on you maybe. And also I am a bit of a scatterbrain, so my questions might be perceived as a little bit confused, but just to defend myself, I am an English learner, and there is a lot to think about, and it's not that easy. But let's go to the topic. Cara, you as a listening teacher, so could you please give a little introduction?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Cara Leopold, and I'm originally from the UK, but I've lived in France since 2007, so that's quite a while now. And a few years ago I started teaching online, and I got interested in teaching listening skills, and then I started combining that with movies, and then more recently I've been running a movie club for English learners. So that's not just about improving your listening skills, but also talking to others, listening to them, sharing thoughts about movies, discussing and analyzing movies. So it goes a lot deeper than just, I'm here to improve my listening skills. It's more like I want to be part of this community and share my thoughts about films and improve my English as a result of enjoying watching and discussing films.
Yeah, and I find it really cool because you really lived it through, right? Because I think you are in Besançon in France.
Very good pronunciation.
And thank you. And you struggled a lot with the French language, and for you it was also like a struggle to learn how to understand the movies, because I will read it out loud, quote it from your blog. I struggled and struggled through lots of uncomfortable and unhelpful situations, even though I have a degree in linguistics. And yeah, that cracked me up quite a bit, because maybe there is a misconception that when someone is a linguist, then it's very easy to understand 100% of the target language, but it's not so. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you could become a very good listener in French.
Yeah, well, what helped me a lot was moving here. That definitely helped. That's you don't necessarily have to do that. I decided I wanted to do that for various reasons, not just for my French. And yeah, what I spent a lot of time doing, I think especially at the beginning, was, well, yes, taking opportunities to speak to people, but also just observing people's conversations and people's interactions, and then kind of copying what they did. So this is obviously a lot easier when you already know the language quite well. But I was kind of lacking, because I studied French at university. That obviously helps. We can't say it doesn't, but you're learning, you know, the sort of academic form of the language. You're not really learning how to speak in everyday situations. So yeah, I had to observe those everyday situations, and yeah, listening and being able to catch expressions that I could use that would sound more natural in conversation, like interjections and expressions for agreeing with people, and just, yeah, overall more conversational expressions. Yeah, that kind of came through listening and observing. So yeah, at times I maybe spoke a bit less so I could, you know, listen more and catch particular phrases, many of which I don't really know how to translate them into English. I just know and use them because I learned them in context. So I think that's a really cool thing about improving your listening skills, is that then you can get lots of input from context, and you can't get it if you don't understand what you hear. So that's an important point. If you're only getting like a vague, kind of fuzzy general message, but you can't hear like specific, you know, the words that make up a specific phrase that people keep using, then you can't use it yourself. So yeah, it's really important to be able to catch you know, all the little details, so that then you can copy and then use it yourself.
Okay, and it seems to me that these days listening skills are not taught that often. And what do you think, or do you agree with me? And how come?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's getting better, but yeah, it's kind of something that I had to teach myself. So I am a trained teacher, but yeah, we didn't spend a lot of time on listening skills. And yeah, it was kind of similar to what I had done at school. So, you know, you make your students, you get them to listen to something, some passage from the textbook or some dialogue or something like that, and then they have questions to answer about it. So that's pretty classic, but that's not actually useful. You know, that's known as like the testing approach to listening, and you know, people can just guess the right answer. You know, when you have like multiple choice sort of questions, or sometimes they want you to like infer things from context, and yeah, it's not so much to do with listening as it is just kind of like good guessing skills. I used to do stuff like that because I thought, well, this is what you're supposed to do. And then, you know, as I got deeper into learning how to actually teach listening rather than test it, I realized that yeah, that kind of comprehension quiz approach isn't very useful, at least for listening. So yeah, and I don't really know how things are evolving, slowly, I guess. Yeah, it's been a while since I was at school, but yeah, I don't know if they're still doing things like that or if it's starting to improve a bit.
I don't think so that it is improving, but it's just my gut telling me. And
yeah, it's still something people find hard, so that would suggest that it's yeah, it needs work still.
How does your teaching approach differ from traditional language learning methods?
In general, like, I think nowadays I used to think, and I think we're taught this way, you know, that you can kind of take discrete bits of the language, particular words and expressions or particular bits of grammar, and just kind of teach them bit by bit, and then somehow people will know how to use them. And to a certain extent, I did manage to learn that way at school. I think some people are just able to absorb things that way, but I don't think most people can. And yeah, now I would say, you know, in teaching with movies, it's more about learning through context and input, and high quality input, not just from the films, but also movie reviews and essays about the movies and things like that. And then all that kind of input feeds into the output that people produce. So yeah, I don't really want to go back to teaching where you're sort of expected to, you know, today we're going to learn this thing, and somehow you're going to absorb it and you'll know how to use it when you next need it, because I don't really think that that works very well. I think the best way to learn new language is when you actually, you know, need it, and that's quite nice when you're talking to people and living abroad. Sometimes they can supply the word that you need when you need it, and then I think you're more likely to remember it. It's more meaningful and useful than someone, you know, you taught it in a lesson, you're supposed to somehow try and memorize it and be able to produce it at the right moment, and I don't think that ends up actually working in practice. So yeah, that's what I'm
I
trying
like
to
that. Yeah. It's like it's more tailored to the students' needs, right? Not only needs, but what they really are into. Like in the movie club, if the people want to watch that movie, then we watch that one, and then there are a lot of different sources that we can choose from, and then everyone can decide for themselves which one to read or to watch, and it's more everyone can decide on its own what to do. And then it's
like
more
those
effective.
Yeah, it's like those choose your own adventure books where you choose what happens to the character. You know, you have options and then you have to turn to a particular page. Yeah, I like that. I mean, not everybody's comfortable with that level of autonomy, but I feel like I have the right people in the movie club who are not afraid to be like, you know, here's a list of resources. Nobody's expecting you to watch them all or read them all, but just, you know, choose and let us know if they were useful, and if it's not useful, just try something else. But yeah, I think that can be scary for some people, but also very effective for people who are more self-directed and more autonomous, like yourself.
And Cara, you refer to yourself as a listening teacher, but sometimes I read that you refer to yourself as an English listening skills coach. So how do you like to be called?
Referred to, yeah. I keep changing it. Yeah. I don't know. Now I might go with like creator of the movie club or something like that. Or I had been experimenting with using like movie learning specialist or something like that. So I'm still experimenting with what to call myself exactly. I wanted to move away from like listening a little bit, even though my courses are about teaching listening skills through movies, but the club is broader than that. So I'm still trying to find the right title to reflect that.
I see.
I haven't quite found it yet.
And how do your friends or relatives react when they know what you do for a living? Because I mean, it's not very common to be a creator and to make a living out of it, right? So I suppose that they are. Yes.
They're probably confused, maybe, or Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes my parents will suggest will suggest movies and TV series that they think I should make my club members watch. So I just sort of politely agree, and then you know, obviously they have no clue what's suitable for a non-native speaker of English. They'll just like suggest something that they liked or something like this. So yeah, and likes talking about movies. So
Oh
yeah,
yes.
usually the response is all right.
And you also have a podcast which is called Cara's Fast Natural English Podcast. But I think it has been quite a while since you have uploaded a new
Yeah,
episode.
it's something I did at the beginning because I thought it'd be interesting to have you know, a podcast where someone spoke relatively naturally. So I just uploaded, yeah, some episodes of me. Well, I mean, you know, how useful it is debatable because it's me, you know, monologuing, but I am doing it spontaneously. So the way I speak is full of features of spontaneous speech. So there's, you know, pauses and hesitations and repetitions and all that kind of thing. Although I think probably the best resource for that is, yeah, listening to unscripted dialogue as opposed to monologue. But even an unscripted monologue is quite good because a lot of podcasts for English learners, if they're the kind of, you know, word of the day style or something like that, they're scripted. So they're not so much about teaching you listening skills as opposed to like, you know, this podcast is going to teach you
Yeah.
vocabulary or something. I think that's a really important distinction to make because between scripted and unscripted speech and what's actually useful for in terms of real world comprehension, because I think scripted podcasts can be really useful. Scripted and sort of slow-ish podcasts can help you get very high quality input where you're likely to actually catch a lot of it, which is important. But they don't necessarily reflect how people actually talk in real life. So if you're interested in understanding real life, you know, two-way dialogue, then listen to podcasts that are unscripted dialogue. But I see a lot of people making these sort of basic mistakes again and again because like they listen to a TED talk and then they're like,
Yeah.
I don't
The
understand
classic.
native speakers talking fast in conversation. It's like, well, a TED talk is not a conversation, it's a scripted monologue. So there's like a mismatch between what you want to understand and what you're listening to. And so, you know, different types of speech are different and they have different functions and they're going to help you with different things. So watching a TED talk could be good if you want to prepare a presentation and you want to learn how to do it effectively, or you want to pick up some vocabulary about a specialist area. Also useful for spontaneous speech because they're not spontaneous speech. And I'm kind of surprised that I have to talk about this all the time, but I do because teachers recommend them. They say, oh, well, TED Talks have a transcript, but in fact, every single subtitled YouTube video has a transcript similar to the so, you know, I just find this as a weird kind of circular logic, like you should watch them because they have a transcript. Well, but what if I want to understand spontaneous speech? Oh, we'll still watch a TED Talk because it's got a transcript. Like, obviously, I'm for listening material that comes with a transcript. It's really important, but it doesn't have to be a TED Talk. I can't. I feel like I've spent years just going round in circles about this, and it just, you know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think as technology is evolving, the transcript thing is gonna go away in a way because these days I am using an app called SNIPD and it lets you transcribe the episodes automatically. So it uses artificial intelligence and you have the subtitles almost immediately at your hands.
Wow.
But it only works in English so far. But it will come also in other languages. It takes time. Maybe, I don't know, a few years and then it will be able. And
even
actually,
the quality of of YouTube, the auto-generated
Yes.
YouTube subtitles are getting better with time. You know, the machine learning is adjusting. So yeah, like you say, it's less and less of an issue. Like everything will be subtitled or have a transcript soon enough.
Exactly, and we have way more possibilities these days. When I think of the vast possibilities on podcast resources that are just a friendly chat, right? So I can listen to some Americans, or I can listen to people from New Zealand, and it has become very easy to produce. So that means that we are able to listen to unscripted content. And this was not possible a few years ago because people were not ready or did not have the technology, but it became normal. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, we're lucky. We live in an amazing time.
Exactly. Why do you think, Cara, do people want to learn English through movies? This is a very basic question, but I would like to know why do people want to learn through movies?
Well, I hope it's because they like movies. I mean, I don't know. It makes me laugh. What someone who took one of my courses once said to me, you know, who doesn't like movies? You know, I see a listening course telling me you're going to learn through movie quotes. And I'm like, yeah, because I like movies. So I suppose that would be that would be like a very basic answer. But then we can go one layer deeper and we can ask, you know, why do people like movies? And, you know, we can look to, you know, the fantastic stories that movies tell and the way that they reflect aspects of ourselves that we may like or not like, you know, and the way that they maybe speak to universal truths about humanity. We'll get onto that when we discuss Groundhog Day. And also just being transported, I think, being transported to another world for a couple of hours, you know, it's an experience that takes you out of your day-to-day life. And it also lets you, you know, as you observe the characters and the way they behave, you might ask yourself, you know, why are they doing that? And it can help you develop empathy for them, you know, as you try to put yourself in the shoes of a character and think, well, you know, what would I have done in that situation? So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, you know, beyond language learning that make people want to learn with movies that are just to do with the nature of movies themselves, like books, like literature, you know.
Because I think that there is a little bit of a misconception, well, at least sometimes, that people maybe think that if they just watch a movie passively, that they are gonna learn the language. Do you think there is a little bit of this misconception when students begin to use it as a resource tool to learn a target language?
Yeah, I mean, I think I fell into this trap as well when I was learning languages, because I was like, well, you know, a movie, it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours long. So if you watch that, that's like a really deep immersion in the language. That was kind of my assumption when I was learning foreign languages. But then when you actually try it, it's not that simple. So I think there is an assumption that you can just, you know, I think we often sort of, because we speak our native languages so effortlessly, we just assume that things transfer to language learning. So we're like, you know, watching TV series or movies, that's something that basically requires zero effort, right? So maybe we assume that it's going to be, you know, easy in a foreign language, and it's obviously, you know, incredibly challenging. But yeah, it's something we associate with relaxation and something that you can do when you're tired, like after work, and it involves, you know, sitting on a couch. So it seems very easy. Yeah.
I struggle a lot when there are cultural references in a movie. And do you have any tips how to overcome that barrier? Yeah,
of the cultural references. Well, I mean, one of the things, and that kind of breaks this image of, effortless, relaxed watching is just preparing yourself a bit before you watch a movie. So sometimes it can really help to know something about the context. If it's an historical drama or something, knowing a little bit about the context in which it's set, that can just help you. I'm not saying you'll catch every single reference, but at least it gives you, and you're not going in with like nothing and then getting lost because you really don't understand the context or the setting. So, and I mean, you can do that in quite basic ways. You can watch the trailer or read a plot summary. In Movie Club, we also do a lot of reading kind of afterwards. So you might read a movie review and things start to become clearer. Or on YouTube, sometimes you can find like full summaries of a movie that kind of spell things out a bit more. So, and these are also things that you can write down. And this is why I think watching movies in a group is so effective, because then you can ask the others that you're learning with, like, what was this part of the movie about, or what was that a reference to, and you can discuss it together, and maybe someone else knows, or somebody can send you to a reference that will explain it, or whatever. So you can't achieve that from passively watching.
Yeah, definitely. And when you say you take notes, where exactly do you take notes? Do you have like a notebook?
So sometimes when I watch movies for the movie club, I just like note down a couple of interesting things. I mean, it's obviously easier for me because I understand everything, but I try to note down my observations about, maybe there's like a really cool camera angle or shot, or there's an observation about a character I want to write down. Sometimes I'm like, I get the movie on and I'm like, oh no, I don't have any paper or something, so I just like write in Evernote on my phone. But really you could scribble this on a bit of paper. You could write it on a napkin with lipstick. I mean, it doesn't it doesn't have to be a sophisticated note-taking system, and also you don't want to spend the whole movie taking notes. It's just a couple of observations, not an in-depth analysis or anything, but just a couple of things. And even if that's questions like, what on earth was this movie about? Like, I don't understand the point of this film.
And do you see yourself as a movie buff?
I don't know, really. Not really. I mean, I still rely a lot on people who have expertise in this field. So people who are movie reviewers or movie bloggers, or who make essays about movies on YouTube. And there's some really incredible resources. And I turn to those people for help with analyzing and understanding movies too. So, I bring the language learning part into it, but I never studied film or anything like that. So for me, it's been a real education. And I'm very grateful to all the amazing free resources we have online that can help us understand films.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, because oftentimes when I watch a movie and then I read a blog post about it with an analysis, then I got an epiphany or something like that, because oftentimes I don't understand, the symbols and so on. When it gets very complicated, I am more than glad that there are a lot of blog posts and reviews and stuff that are talking about it in more detail.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we would probably be kind of stuck without those. But obviously, our own interpretations are important too. Whatever those are. And I think that's what's really cool about, again, watching movies in a group and coming from different language and cultural backgrounds. Everybody sees something different. Everybody interprets something slightly different. So even if, and a sort of quote unquote official interpretation helps. And you see kind of patterns across like reviews and blog posts about particular movies. Some people don't necessarily agree. They don't necessarily agree with the principal interpretation of such and such a film, and they have an alternative perspective. So that's what's really cool as well. And over time, as people, there are films that we've watched recently, like Hitchcock movies. Some of them were really unsuccessful when they first came out, like as if maybe people weren't ready for them, and then they were reappraised in the subsequent decades. So you can see, like, as society moves forward and as different people watch the same film, they take away something completely different. So a film that can be a flop, and even The Thing that we mentioned at the beginning, when it first came out, it was really misunderstood and people really didn't like it. And then over the years, it became a cult film, and now it's regarded as one of the best horror films of all time. And John Carpenter has even said, if The Thing had been successful on its release, his career trajectory would have been different. I hope he's not too bitter about it, but I don't think so. But yeah, I read something recently where he mentioned that. So it's funny, just sometimes you create something and it's like, it's not the right time for whatever reason, but afterwards people watch it and they're like, oh wow, this is a masterpiece, when it was, criticized when it first came out.
It is as if they were ahead of the time, right? So these creators, they and you see that also with authors. For example, there is a horror author called H.P. Lovecraft, who was a poor guy. Many decades afterwards, he became very famous. But he deceased. So it's really a tragedy in a way.
Yeah, it's tragic. Yeah, I was watching a documentary about Vincent van Gogh, and it's the same thing. He wasn't recognized during his lifetime, and then now he's regarded as one of the greatest painters ever, but obviously he didn't get a chance to actually benefit from that recognition. But yeah, we're lucky that he did paint, while he was alive, and we get to benefit from his work now.
And Cara, do you have any tips how we can make the process easier to watch a movie and learn from it? I will give you an example. For example, what I would do sometimes, not always, is there is a website called Language Reactor, and it shows you like the whole subtitles, and you can have like a second subtitle in another language, and that way you can learn better. And what I would do also is, because you see a list of all the words that are involved in the movie, so to speak, and they are placed depending on the level of difficulty. Right. They are listed. And then, for example, there are the most difficult words in the end, and then I can skim through it, and then I see, these words I might not know, and then I look them up beforehand, before I watch the movie. I don't know if you are aware of that website.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I think you have other ideas.
I think it used to be called Language Learning for Netflix. I mean, that's interesting from a sort of vocabulary learning point of view. And yeah, just for quickly looking up, key words. I mean, I don't really like having a decontextualized list like that, but I guess it is useful if you can quickly see which ones you don't recognize and which ones might be useful. Yeah, there are definitely technical tools that you can use, but otherwise kind of the process that we go through in Movie Club and the process that I share quite widely is sort of starting off by choosing your movie with a bit of care, so choosing something you'd be interested in, perhaps choosing something you've already seen, maybe dubbed into your language or with subtitles, like something you're familiar with, or maybe like if it's based on a book, maybe you've read the book, like basically going in with a bit of familiarity. And that can also come through, reading a bit about it before, watching the trailer, just getting yourself ready, perhaps a little bit more than you would when you're watching in your native language. Although even in your native language, it can really help to know a bit of the context before you go in, because it's very easy to get lost at the beginning of a movie if you don't really know, who are these people? What's the point? What's going on here? So you can definitely prepare yourself. And then I've been reading, there've been a couple of like articles and videos that have come out in the last couple of years about how native English speakers are using captions, subtitles more and more, because they're finding it hard to catch the dialogue of more recent movies, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and that's to do with, moving from an analog to a digital age and the way that sound is captured on sets nowadays, and also the compression of sound, which happens when you watch streamed movies and stuff like that. And I can send you some links about that. But basically, to me, the message coming through is that, like, where possible, watch older movies. So watch movies from the pre-digital age, by which that could be movies from like the 1990s. I'm not talking necessarily about the 1950s. In those movies, the sound quality should be better. I'm not saying you're going to understand everything, but you'll have more of a chance of understanding more. And then obviously if the movie is older, there's more of a chance that you've already seen it. And also a lot of new movies are trash. Let's be honest. Like, they're all just like, it's the Fast and Furious 27 or like Spider-Man 56, or I don't know. It's just like, it's all these franchises of like Marvel characters or whatever. I mean, we've never watched anything like that in the movie club. Just because, like, we need movies that we can discuss. So we need movies that, maybe I'm being unfair to superhero films, but if a movie is mostly action, like, there's just not enough substance there for us to talk about, in terms of like symbols and meanings and themes and the story and the characters and stuff like that. If it's just fighting, it's no good. Yeah. So there's, choosing your movie. Doing some things to prepare yourself, making it easier on yourself. Watching with headphones seems to make a difference to people. I don't know if you've noticed this.
I usually I don't listen with headphones, but this is a good tip. I should give it a try.
Because it really improves the sound quality. And you're unlucky if you have like a really modern flat screen TV, like a super thin one. Apparently the sound isn't as good as the thicker flat screen TVs, because obviously the speakers are getting smaller and smaller. So, technology is working against us a little bit.
Yeah, it's really weird that the audio quality is better, or it's easier to understand an older movie than the modern ones. But yeah, it has to do also because there are so many different tools or devices. Like in the cinema, there are the settings, and then maybe the movie was set up to be very good in the cinemas, but then if you enjoy it on your mobile phone, then it doesn't match. It doesn't match with the settings that it was been made for. But I don't know. I can't explain myself in English.
That's something that comes up in the article. One of the articles I read, which is quite long and quite technical, but yeah, they talk about the cinema mix, and then there's a mix for like people's home entertainment systems. But like you say, obviously they're all slightly different. Nobody has the exact same. Yeah, there's just so many like speakers and TVs and different setups that you can have at home. And sometimes even the mixing for cinemas isn't right, and staff in the cinema fiddle with it and it comes out wrong. And it's a bit of a big mess, to be honest, sound nowadays. It sounds like it was almost easier in the pre-digital age when it was analog and, they had these big microphones and the actors just had to like aim for the microphone. And now they have these tiny, almost invisible microphones. So the actors can kind of speak more in a more natural way, but then that can be really hard to understand. So it's tricky. It's tricky. But watching movies are hard. I mean, irrespective of all these factors, the dialogue is hard. It can be harder than normal conversations. So I mean, I think part of it is also not being too hard on yourself. And if you want to put the subtitles on, like, that's okay. And it's if the goal is, just enjoying the story and following the story, then, using the subtitles is fine.
And what bothers me a lot is when I am using subtitles and the subtitles don't match what is spoken. Because maybe, I don't know exactly why.
When they're in English or when they're in another language?
Also in English sometimes. but
Yeah, they
it
don't.
happens more. It happens more with other languages. For example, I am learning Italian, and more than not, the subtitles don't fit to what has been said, and it bothers me. It bothers me, and yeah, it's really annoying, and that might also be a reason why I always switch back to English, because I wanted to make it my priority number one to learn Italian, and then I watch something and then I go back to English because I understand way more in English than in Italian, of course. And yeah. But what do you think?
That makes sense.
Did you realize that the subtitles don't correspond the spoken words? Well, at least sometimes.
Yeah, occasionally in English, but I've seen it more with, like, you know, if you go to see a foreign language movie at the cinema, and clearly, like, people are still talking, and like, but there's no more subtitles, so you can see that the subtitles are more of a kind of summary of what they've said. They're not necessarily a faithful representation of every single bit of dialogue. But yeah, if I go to see films in English here, and then there's French subtitles, like, I often read the French subtitles because I'm just curious about how they translated the English and how, like, faithful it is. Which is not good, actually, because then I, like, end up not paying attention to the film, so I try to ignore them. But it's interesting to see how they subtitle certain things, and especially, yeah, like cultural references. Like if you have to replace a famous person or something like that. I mean, even in different varieties of English, this doesn't always work, because if a reference is like really American, like a reference to baseball or something, you know, in the UK, we just don't, like, we don't know anything about baseball. So sometimes those references or jokes just like don't work. It's like if you had jokes about cricket for Americans, like they're not gonna. I don't actually understand cricket, to be honest. So yeah.
I am currently watching a series called Justified. It's like a modern Western series, and the thing is that they are talking with a very thick Southern American accent, and what is hilarious is that the actors, they don't talk like that. They had to pick up the accent. So I am currently watching a series in which even the actors, it's not their language, it's not their accent. But to me it's okay, you know, because it's pleasure, it's what I love to do. But it's just a very funny thought. Or what do you think? That the actors, they don't even talk like they talk in their normal life.
Yeah, they had to, like, you know, accent trainers are a thing in Hollywood because, I don't know, for some reason the studio wants to cast an actor who doesn't have that particular accent. I mean, I can understand it's not always possible to find the right person whose accent is naturally the one that you want. So, yeah, this is pretty common. Like, we saw it with, you hadn't joined yet, but earlier in the year we watched Invictus, which is about it's kind of like a fictional documentary about the South African rugby team, and when they won the World Cup in 1995, like not long after Mandela got out of prison, and this was his project, like to help reunite the country, get behind the rugby team. So in that movie, the main characters are like Matt Damon and what's that actor called? Morgan Freeman is plays Mandela. Yeah, and so they obviously are not South African, they're American, but they have to they both had to learn the South African accent. And I would say Matt Damon does a pretty good job. I don't know, I'm not South African, I can't, you know, maybe can't judge as accurately as someone from South Africa, but I thought he did a really good job, whereas Morgan Freeman, he like does a good kind of South African rolled R, but you can definitely hear like the American accent, you know, like he doesn't do quite as good a job. I think they were just like, just roll your R and then you're kind of South African. But yeah, it's quite funny. It's quite funny to see that and to see when it's done badly and to see when it's done well.
Yeah. And a lot can go wrong if they don't take an accent coach and stuff like that. And people who are concerned, they can be very upset when they notice that their accent is spoken in a terrible way. They can get very angry. Well, according to Reddit, because I read some articles about that.
Oh, right, okay. No, I can imagine that because, it is frustrating, and maybe they could have cast somebody who, with the accent, or they could have done a better job with the accent training. But anyway.
And Cara, can you tell us a little bit about Leo Listening and what's the main mission of Leo Listening?
I would say nowadays it's really helping people understand and discuss movies together. People who have learned in the traditional way, and maybe they use English fine at work, and they have done all the tests, and they kind of there isn't really much more for them to do, but they know that maybe films are still difficult for them, or understanding native speakers in conversation is still challenging. So it's trying to help people who are in that situation, who are feeling a bit stuck and who want to do something different, and who obviously enjoy movies and are a bit fed up of watching them alone and watching them passively. Because I think just watching the fact of watching them together, it already changes the way that you watch them, because you know that you have to be ready to discuss them with others. So you can't just kind of watch them half asleep on the couch. You have to pay a bit more attention, even if it's just to say, I don't understand what this movie was about.
Yes. Yes, and where can we find you, since you don't have social media?
Well, yes and no. So, people can go to the website. So that's leo-listening.com, and then they can find me also on YouTube. And the name on YouTube is Leo Listening. And then I do actually post on LinkedIn, if that can be considered social media. So my profile is my name, so Cara Leopold. And I post on there as well about learning with movies and all that good stuff.
Okay, I will put the links in the show notes as well. Yeah, before we go on to the Groundhog Day, do you want to have a little break?
I'm okay, I can keep going. What do you think?
Good. This was part 1 of our lovely chat, and I decided to take a very small break to drink water. And in the second part, we will discuss the movie Groundhog Day, and it's a really brilliant movie.